When you use the round function, typically you're dealing with rounding numbers based on decimal placement. For example, in this worksheet called Specialized Rounding, in column C, we've got formulas, and in C2, we see the formula here that's rounding a calculation to the nearest 2 decimal places. In other words, to the nearest penny. Now, we also could round this if we wanted to the nearest dollar. We probably wouldn't do that with pricing items like the ones in column B, but we could do that. But the numbers that we use here in the final portion of the round function relate to the number of decimal places. What if we wanted to round this to a multiple or a different number not related to decimals? What if we wanted to round all of our prices to the nearest nickel, for example? We can't just plug in a 0.05 there. We need to use a different function called MROUND. We now want to round this to the nearest 5 cents, the nearest nickel, you might say, 0.05. Now, the example in our first case here, since the price was $9, it's going to stay $9. But we haven't dragged that into the next cell below. You can probably foresee or predict what's going to happen here. If we use MROUND the way it's used here to round our calculation to the nearest nickel, then as we drag this into the next cell, you can be sure it's going to be 3.25. And the next one down, 4.25. The next one's going to stay at 7.95. And the next one after this would be 6.45 and so on. And so you can try these one by one or just take out a few of them to see what's happening here. In some cases, what you want to do is to make sure that these go up no matter what. Now, in all cases here, we're providing an increase, but as I press Control Z slowly to move backward here, maybe in some cases here, what we might want to do is to always go up to the next nickel. And MROUND doesn't do that necessarily. It goes to the nearest nickel. So if we want this to go up, and if you've seen other round functions, you would probably make the guess, well, we've got round, and then there was a round up and a round down, so it's probably what? M round up and M round down. But that's not the case. The companion functions here will be ceiling and floor. You see them listed out there to the right in column F. So if we want to go up to the next 5 cents, we put in ceiling. And that stays the same here because the actual calculation comes out to be 8.999, something or other like that. So this goes up to the next nickel. But in the next case downward, that's going to go to 330. And the next case downward, 430. Next case is probably going to be the same. Now, actually, that one went up too. So that was slightly over 7.95 earlier, although we didn't actually see that amount. So the companion function for MROUND to go upward, in other words, override standard ruling techniques, is called ceiling. And of course, if we wanted to go downward, it would be floor. Now, as we look at the data over in column H, similar kind of setup, obviously with bigger values. And there's a formula already in place in cell H2 and doesn't have any rounding just yet. And let's imagine here that we might want to round these. So a standard way to round these would be to round these to the nearest dollar, for example. In a yearly salary, that's not uncommon. So comma 0 certainly would be one thing to do here. Now, I've seen situations, perhaps you have too, where people get paid 26 times a year, that's every 2 weeks, or maybe 24 times a year, that's twice a month. Is this evenly divisible by 26 or possibly 24? Suppose we have a biweekly pay period, you get paid every 2 weeks, and we want that amount to be a whole number. Right now, if we take this value and divide it by 26, it's not a whole number. In other words, it's got pennies there. So could we do something with our calculation here for our new salaries to make sure that they're evenly divisible by 26? Let's leave the formula there and use MROUND to round this to the nearest $26. In other words, multiples of 26. So instead of 0 here, we'll use 26. And when I press enter, we'll have a new calculation, a new result. And over here, we left in the formula that divides this by 26. It does come out even. So the gross pay for each pay period will be, in this case, $21.87. And here's our formula again, looking at the number that way. So how much did this really change? We're looking at $56,862. I go back with Control Z a few times. Looks like it went down about $8. So that's the difference there. And similarly, if we wanted to make sure that these are even, if there are 24 pay periods a year, we want that to be evenly divisible by 24. Simple fix here, we would simply use, in our example here, 24 here, and that, of course, would be an MROUND as well, too. If we go to the nearest multiple of 24. So now that's evenly divisible by 24. And here's our check on it. So I think you can see how if you need to calculate numbers and have them evenly divisible, you could be using MROUND. Possibly it's two companions, either one ceiling to always round upward no matter what, floor to always round downward no matter what. But the main point is that you can use these in a way that isn't restricted to decimal type settings. MROUND, ceiling, and floor.